Previously on Maddie's Timeline Pseudo Show.
Come on, James, you can't just lock me up down here like I'm some kind of deadite. Let me out of the basement.
Basement? Maddie, that's such a funny guy. Why did I lock you in a room with the chainsaw?
Hey, wait, whoa, wait, are you putting me back in the basement again?
And now, the conclusion.
Take a good look, viewer. I've been in this basement for nearly 40 years, and I haven't aged one day. I have become what many men have dreamed of, an immortal. And yet, there hasn't been a day, an hour, a minute I haven't thought about the timeline. It obsesses me, even now. Okay, I'm over-exaggerating by a bit. It hasn't actually been 40 years, but since we're looking into the future, I thought I'd set the mood. One of the things that has confused fans of the DCAU over the years is when exactly Terry McGinnis's splicer-fueled synthoid hunting adventures take place. At the time of its airing, many people suggested that Batman Beyond occurred in some sort of alternate timeline, more like a what-if kind of situation. But as the years went on, the present-day series began to cross over through episodes like Future Shock, The Once and Future Thing, and even Epilogue, which clearly cemented the show's placement in the DCAU. So when did Batman Beyond happen? Well, I'm here to settle it once and for all. Kind of. Well, the important parts at least. Today we'll be uncovering just when exactly Rebirth, Epilogue, and Return of the Joker took place, as well as the flashback from that movie. Over the years, the show's start date has been a hot topic for debate, with some sources giving explicit dates, such as 2038 in the official Batman Beyond animated series guide, or a little bit later as we hear in this Toonami promo.
In the year 2039.
Damn it, Colin. No, not you. You let us down in other ways. I'm talking to this guy. Voice actor Peter Cullen gave us this info in 2001 when the show moved from Kids WB to Cartoon Network's Toonami block. Overall, the 2038-2039 debate isn't a large discrepancy though. After all, depending on what time of year the show starts, that could be as little of a difference as a few months. That's not too bad. But then we get stuff like this. In case you missed our video on Luthor's presidency, which I suggest you watch, I talked about Luthor's run-up to the presidency in Justice League Unlimited being cemented in 2003, and JLU's final season occurring the next year in 2004. Being the finale to JLU Season 2, Epilogue would then be in 2068. And while that doesn't seem like a problem yet, let me make it one for you guys.
You know how much I care about you.
Sure. Why else keep dating for 15 years?
Terry and Dana have been dating for 15 years, which as we see in Batman Beyond's debut is kind of a recent development.
That friend of yours, Dana, called.
With this knowledge, we now end up with the show starting in 2053, which is, well, a bit different from the late 2030s, to say the least. So we can ignore the 2030s date, right? It's not established in the show, right? Yes and no. You see, if this magazine cover in Batman the Animated Series is to be believed, and we know Bruce is college age 10 years prior due to Mask of the Phantasm, then by 2053 he'd be at least 90, and that doesn't really match with how he looks or any of the official bios that state he's in his 70s or 80s. And at this rate, it'd be a shock, well, more of a shock. No, even more. It would be a surprise that he lived past that into his hundreds. I get it.
65 is the new 30.
But at some point, we're just stretching the fabric a bit thin. So 2053 seems odd. And while close, 2038 and 2039 are contradictory. So when is it then? Ladies and gentlemen of the court, I direct your attention to Exhibit A, Batman Beyond spin-off show, The Zeta Project.
Unit Zeta went renegade August 5th, 2041.
Zeta was on a long-term assignment, infiltrating a terrorist group. 6 days ago, it went renegade.
Awesome. Now that we have an anchor to work with in this August 11th, 2041 date, we can work backwards to figure out Rebirth's placement. If we look back to Hidden Agenda, we see a Homecoming poster, placing that episode in fall 2040. And then in Golem, we see the Spring Fling of the same year. Since that's only the 4th episode, this must mean Rebirth occurs in 2040.
Maddie, you were forgetting something.
Okay. So we've had a lot of discussion about this, and in Rebirth, we get this exchange.
A little early for Halloween.
but just in time for fall.
Admittedly, I've been hesitant to accept that as evidence for Rebirth in the tail end of 2039, due to it leaving a gap spanning several months between Terry donning the Batsuit and the aforementioned spring fling. But it works so well with the Toonami promo, as well as some confusion around Terry's age that we'll get to at another time. So, I concede. Batman Beyond starts in fall 2039.
I told you.
Shut up.
So we've successfully pinned down Batman Beyond starting in 2039 and continuing on until at least late 2041. I mentioned earlier we were going to pin down the events of Return of the Joker as well, so let's move on and do that. While the movie's placement is harder to pin down than any episode since we don't have a production number attached to it, we do know that it must occur after Paxton Powers is ousted from Wayne Powers and King's Ransom, but before Wayne has full control of the company back in Out of the Past. So it's sandwiched in between those two sometime around the events of the episode Betrayal. Knowing this, we can move forward from our established August 11th, 2041 date. We hear spring break is over by the time of Plague. We see Terry at the beach in Untouchable, signifying it's summertime. And Hamilton Hill High is noticeably missing for 5 more episodes until we see it again in Out of the Past, placing the events of Return of the Joker in the summer of 2042. And now, the infamous flashback. If you haven't seen the Return of the Joker movie, first of all, why are you watching this? Second of all, go watch it right now. It's streaming on Amazon and it's cut into pieces on the Warner Bros. YouTube. It's okay. I'll wait. Good. You done? Is this joke funny yet? In the film, we're told that
It's been almost 40 years.
So if we assume that's a range of 35 to 39 years ago, this gives us a gap of 2003 to 2007. That gap closes even further when we take into consideration that Harley's whereabouts were known in fall of 2003 as per our research on Batman and Harley Quinn. And even further when we account that in 2005 Dwayne McDuffie stated, "It hasn't happened yet." I'd be surprised if our present ever caught up with Return of the Joker. I'm confident that the Joker will recover from his drubbing at Ace's hands and bedevil Batman many more times before that final battle, which places it after spring 2004, which once again is when we've concluded Justice League Unlimited's final season occurs. From there we can narrow it down further, but not by much. In the miniseries, Batman, Harley, and Ivy, we get a clue that Harley was still active in May 2004. While it may not have been original intent for this series to occur after JLU, no other date works for this stupidly obscure round and then vertical numbered date. If we assume it's in the early 90s, it wouldn't make sense with the multiple nods to the new Batman Adventures era designs, which may canonically still be in use at the time of Justice League. More on that later. And in 2001, Arkham was out of order, so the series doesn't fit there either. The 2004 placement is further cemented by the publication date, as well as Harley replacing George Bush as Times Person of the Year, since we've already established he likely never became president in this universe. Towards the end of the series, we get a flash forward to the Oscars, which occurred in February in 2005. So the film's flashback must occur after that point. Now, I know what you're thinking. If Tim Drake becomes Robin during the new Batman Adventures in 1999, and his official bio states he's 13 at the time, then how does he still look 13 at least 6 years later? To which I say, how are you thinking the same exact thing I wrote in my script? Are you in my apartment? I mean, James' basement? Are you standing right behind me right now? But yes, that Robin thing hasn't gone unnoticed, and it only gets weirder. Remember when I said Epilogue supposedly occurs in 2068? Well, here's another line from the episode that muddies things up even further.
Maybe you dug up some of that old Cadmus nanotech. Used it to have my genes rewritten to match yours.
That technology's been illegal for over 40 years.
Didn't stop the Joker from using it on Tim Drake.
Now, while in all technicality, 2005 to 2007 is over 40 years ago from 2068, wouldn't over 60 years ago have made more sense? Or if we're placing Epilogue in 2054 due to Dana and Terry dating for 15 years since Rebirth, maybe over 50 years ago? In one fell swoop, one of the greatest episodes of the DCAU goofed the timeline up to make Tim Drake as old as 41 by the time of the Joker's demise. So what does this mean for the timeline then, you may be asking yourself? Well, I've been asking myself the same thing. You see, while being billed as 40 years in the future in promotional material such as the guidebook and other official sources, as well as a couple mentions throughout the shows,
no big surprise considering you just hopscotched over 40 years.
There's always been conflicting evidence.
Take a good look, Doctor. I've been like this for nearly 50 years.
You've traveled about 50 years into your future.
So I guess really it all comes down to how you want to interpret all the information we're given. In your head, does it make more sense for the 40 years later timeline of Terry becoming Batman in 2039, Joker returning in 2042, and the events of Epilogue occurring 15 years after Rebirth in 2054? Or do you prefer Bruce Timm's statement of the Batman Beyond world is always 50 years from now, whenever now is?
Bro, if you think about these things too much, your head will explode.
I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Whether or not you've subscribed, donated to the Patreon, or just shared these videos with your friends on Facebook and other social media, thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in such things, we create a spin-off webcomic that chronicles the missing time between Justice League Unlimited and Batman Beyond called Legacies of the DCAU. You can find a link to that in the description below. Stay tuned for other timeline videos like this and much more from the Watchtower Database.